we should be able to be safe anywhere. And I would warn my daughter or my son, just be careful when you go to clubs. Just be careful when you go to, just be careful when you go to these places. It's kind of a common knowledge. But now you're just literally going to buy bread, butter, and poo for your papa. And someone in front of you can get stabbed. So let's get into the conversation. We're joined by crime expert Willem Els, and we're also joined by gender-based activist and legal analyst Pabi Dubazana to discuss this growing trend of femicide, essentially, in public spaces, what the protections of victims have, and under the law, what are the rights of the family. Because I do believe there's a tussle back and forth about the CCTV footage. So let's welcome our guests. Willem, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
And Pabi thank you very much for joining us this afternoon as well.
Good afternoon, Pabi. And also a point of correction. I'm not a gender-based violence activist. I'm just an attorney.
Oh, I see. I was told something different. Yeah, but that's fine. Can we start then with you, Willem, and talk about an attack happening inside a very busy mall or a supermarket? How is it even possible? Like, what's happening at the door, at security, in a mall, that someone could walk in, stab someone multiple times, no one intervenes, and that's just the next day's front page?
Yeah. Unfortunately, in South Africa, we allowed a environment that is very toxic and very violent in terms of crime because of inactions and because of condoning or silently condoning, etc., etc. This is a long story behind that. But what we must understand is, security and your physical security is very expensive to manage. So what the companies would normally do, and the centers, is they will do a risk assessment, a threat analysis of what the threat is, and then they will adjust their security levels and according to that. So if for instance, if you look at a supermarket where we believe this has happened, you will normally find a security guard at the door, and that guy is more focused most of the time on people taking out something without paying for it and so on. So, and that is based on the threat assessment. So if the threat assessment that was done by this company did not raise the red flag for attacking, for people being attacked, then it's very difficult for them to deploy 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 security guards just to look at that. So that's a fine balance that we have to look at. We see if you have a terrorism threat, for instance, and people carrying in bombs, then for that period you will have some scanners at the door. You will have some people being physically searching you, etc., etc. And that's all based on your risk assessment and the threat levels that are there. But see, you mentioned your children going to club. So anytime you get in your vehicle, you know that there's a threat that you might be hijacked when you stop at the traffic light, etc., etc. So our South Africa, I think we became so numb, so if we accept it as the norm, and that should not be the norm. We have to stand up, and we have to take our streets back. So that is basically the background when it comes to security and who's responsible for that. And the same goes for your center. At the center, you've got some of them have got scanners, some of them have just got surveillance cameras, the monitoring from a distance, etc., etc. So it depends on the threat level that is analyzed and decided on.
Let me bring you in, and Pabi, and maybe you'd like to add to what Willem had to say, but we talk about GBVF happening behind closed doors, but more and more it's brazen, more and more it's brutal, and now public. What does this say about the state of violence in our country today, but also about the extent to which it's become worse and worse?
When you are in criminal court as often as we are as attorneys, you see how bad it is. I mean, on a regular day, legal aid who is sitting in court is receiving a minimum, I beg your pardon, of 10 new criminal matters, and that is over and above the 30 matters that he or she would have on that particular day. So crime in our country is a every single day thing, irrespective of whether somebody stole cheese or somebody committed murder or somebody committed rape. Doesn't matter. These are the things that we see in criminal court. And the thing that is sad about this situation is that people take advantage of the fact that it is a known fact that our country has a very serious scourge of criminal acts, be it violent acts, timid acts, or whatever the case may be. And then we have people that lodge complaints with the courts, and then they end up withdrawing them, and then nothing really happens about such things, such that when it gets to court, prosecutors are not as enthusiastic to deal with the matter because they know when they come across, for example, a domestic violence case matter, tomorrow it will be withdrawn. I've seen instances whereby rape matters are brought to the court and then in a few weeks' time they're withdrawn. And not because somebody was intimidated to withdraw, but because the accusation was false. And then this now brings to the fray or to the forefront the issues of the real people who are actually going through real problems, and then they are not given that kind of attention because our courts are now dealing with an influx of cases that are not supposed to be there in the first place.
I mean, Sinenhlanhla's family said they didn't know she was in a relationship, and we're not sure if this is the current or an ex, but regardless, the family didn't quite know that this was going on. And I wonder, how common do you find it that young women won't necessarily tell their parents about what's happening abuse-wise? They may not disclose to their friends or anybody. They'll just hide what's happening. And also, how do we create safer spaces for disclosure, Ntabi Singh?
What I have seen the SAPS try so hard to do is that they are victim-based consultations. In a normal police station, when you walk in, you are forced most of the time to give your story to whomever is there at the reception area, the constable that's there. And sometimes you do not want your story to be heard by everybody because you're still traumatized, you're still hurt, etc., etc. And then you do not want the situation that while you're busy giving your version of events, that Constable Ntabi Singh is now speaking to Constable Pabi and saying, "Hey, did you see what happened yesterday in Faka?" That's how impersonal it gets. You know what I mean? And they're like, "Oh, sorry. Give me 5 minutes." And then they go grab a glass of water or have a small conversation, then come back to your story. That's what happens when you go and open a docket in the SAPS. So now what they have done is that they have created rooms wherein victims can be settled in there. There's somebody from social services who's going to be there to assist in order to try and mitigate whatever that would come up as a result of you telling your version of events. When it comes to the courts, however, it is rather impersonal. The best thing I have seen in rape cases, let me use that one, in rape cases is that the victim most of the time will give evidence through the television. But if her evidence is not strong enough to link the perpetrator as the one who actually committed the deed, the court may request for her to come into the actual courtroom where the accused is to point him out to confirm that this is the person that committed the act.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this is part and parcel of criminal procedure. If you can't point out that my client, because I'll be obviously, as my job description, I'll be defending the accused. If you can't point him out, therefore it means he wasn't the one that committed the crime. So when it comes to procedure of dealing with criminal law, then it becomes a little bit impersonal.
We're talking about this case of a young Soweto girl who was brutally murdered inside the Protea Glen Mall in Soweto, stabbed multiple times by her boyfriend while on duty on Sunday. The family have intervened, demanding access to the CCTV footage and are questioning how this brutal act could happen in public. But in the moment, nobody was intervening. People were shopping and carrying on about their business in many ways. Let me know what your thoughts are on 0861 987 000. You can also send us a voice note on 0833 303 7093. Let's have a listen to this voice note.
Hi, yeah, Pabi, this is embarrassing. Mighty, this is embarrassing. We as a country are failing women. These things will continue. We can name them. There was that Karabo girl who was killed, and then there was that Donald Sivulai who also killed a woman. And you don't understand why, Pabi. Why? Where does all this nonsense come from? And the other sad thing is, Pabi, is these people, they know that you arrest them, they go to jail, then they start claiming all these useless and stupid rights. Rights like they are sick, then they have a right to life while they took somebody else's life. This is nonsense, Pabi. How do you even begin to protect the life of a murderer? Because he has to pay it with his own life. Oh, Amara, Pabi, this is so brutal. South Africa is failing women, I'm telling you. The next thing, Pabi, this guy, the law will tell you who he has a right to life. His life must be spared. For what? They'll tell you about his family, his children, if he has any. But then what about the little girl who just died? That's why, Pabi, sometimes, even though we don't encourage it, but most people resort to taking the law into their own hands, which is not good. Pabi, I'm so disappointed. We'll just have to see what happens. Thank you, Pabi. Baslolo Mamelodi.
Baslolo and Mamelodi there. Willem, a quick comment to what he had to say?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I think that actually represent the sort of the feeling of your general public, because we all of us we tend to support the rule of your law. You want the rule of law to be maintained, and also you want justice. And unfortunately, if you look at your detection rate today of your general crimes in South Africa, it's just about just over 17% of all crimes end up with a guilty verdict in South Africa. That's all your reported crimes. But all your problem that you also have is that most of or many of your GBV crimes, your sexual crimes and violent crimes, they go underreported because of the people, of just what Ntabi Singh mentioned, the processes that they have to go through, and they don't want to go through that, and also because when you are in a relationship like that, it's normally an abusive relationship where these perpetrators then manipulate the victims, and that is why also one of the reasons we get a lot of withdrawals of cases and so forth and so forth. So yes, I think we are failing women, but not only women. It's old people, it's children, but also men that are subjected to these type of things, even though not so prevalent as with women. And the other thing that what Ntabi Singh also mentioned is our police is overburdened.
Hang on, let's leave it right there for now, please. I have to go to the headlines. So when we come back, Willem, we'll pick up on the point of the overburdened police, and then we'll carry on. We've got one or two more callers who'd like to engage with you. Crime expert Willem Els and legal analyst Ntabi Singh Dubazana on the line with us after this.
All the news you need to know. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
We are talking indeed on Power Lunch on Power 98.7, and this is the continuation of a conversation that is in the news a lot at the moment. It will be until the next case of this kind of femicide happens, and then the next case of this kind of femicide happens, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it, understanding the issues behind the Pick and Pay cashier brutally murdered at work, the spotlight on all of the things that were happening, right? So the violence against women, femicide, security failures, and even the regular person as a bystander. And there's no blame being put on that. But, where are we as a society where as a bystander, you actually just stand by? It's very difficult to get involved. for a myriad of reasons that I'm sure you understand as well as I do. On the line with us, we have crime expert Willem Els, and we have legal analyst Pabi Moloi. And before we get to you, Mpho, just before we went to the headlines, Willem, you were talking about the overburdened of the police department.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. You know, if you do an analysis of what went wrong, we see that both your judiciary as well as your police department is severely overburdened by the severity of the crime levels, especially the violent crime levels in South Africa, that we as South Africans and the government, we allowed it to get out of hand, and now it's time for us to start to counter that, and we need the political will and everything else that goes with it. So what we also see in the police, even though you've got your pockets of excellence where the men and women that are really doing their best and fighting against their calling, we also notice more and more what Pabi Moloi was mentioning about the attitude of the policemen in the charge office, the insensitivity, the lack of training. She mentioned that now they are moving to a more professional setup where they have certain rooms and people that can deal with that with the police. That's more addressing the challenges. But unfortunately, you know what? At the two police stations near me, they just don't have it yet. So it is not being rolled out and it's not been implemented as per the strategy of the police to do that. So those are your challenges that are being faced by the public when they engage with the police, but also the judiciary. You know, as you mentioned, the prosecutors are severely overburdened. They are just loaded with more and more cases. And at the end of the day, justice is not being served to the public the way it is supposed to be.
Mpho, you're on the line with us. Thank you for joining us on Power Lunch. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, Pabi, we can upload security. We can throw money at the problems. The only problem that we are facing is this constitution.
Is what?
It's holding us with the constitution.
Oh.
This useless constitution is holding us. The police. We can say the police do that and that. Remember, the police, if they can try to arrest you, and in the process, for them to catch you, because you shooting them, they kill you. They will go through all this process, and the iPad will now start working. So the problem here is confusion. We have been talking about this issue day in and day out of the crime, but no one look at this constitution. No one. Every day we come and talk about it. Remember, in South Africa now, the criminal, what they're thinking of now, when they try to commit any crime, they know firstly that they could not be arrested. There's a 80% that will not be arrested. Even if they are arrested, the constitution will protect them. So, but we come and cry and say, yeah, the crime 1, 2, 3, because here is the constitution. What do you think? What do you expect the police to do? What do you expect the police to do?
Okay, all right, let's leave it there. Yes. Very similar view to what our voice note was talking about earlier, kind of having an understanding that the criminals know that whatever they do, they have a lot of rights because of, as our previous caller was saying, the Constitution. And Pabi saying, I'd love to hear what you think from a legal point of view.
You know what? I understand where people are coming from,
Yeah.
in that the Constitution is protecting criminals and etc. But we have to also remember where it stems from, why it came into being, why Section 35 specifically came into being, which deals with arrested and suspected people. There were a lot of people that were arrested in the past during apartheid for crimes that they had never committed. And as a result, they either were sentenced to life or they were sentenced to death, etc., before the death penalty was removed. So as a result, this Constitution, or that particular section rather of the Constitution, is to ensure that if we are going to arrest Pabi today, we must be very sure that she is the one that committed this crime. Because we're going to find ourselves in hot water, which unfortunately doesn't make the news as much as it should, wherein the state unfortunately, did not arrest the correct person, did not investigate properly, and as a result, people spent so much time in prison. And then when the truth finally came out, now the state is liable for millions upon millions to people for failure to do their job properly.
So that's exactly why he's saying it's the Constitution. And perhaps he's not using necessarily the right vocabulary, but it seems that criminals have more rights than civilians.
Well, I tend to disagree, based because of the way that we see how court is dealt with on a day-to-day basis. There are a lot more people that are convicted than what is given out in stats.
Why?
I have no idea. I don't know why the NPA doesn't give us the stats of how many people they convict per day. For example, in a normal court day, how can I court it right now? You will likely find about 6 or 7 guilty pleas in one sitting in court. So that is already a conviction. The fact that there wasn't a full-blown trial is neither here nor there. It's a conviction nonetheless. But these things are not reported. So I don't know. It would probably give the public a little bit more confidence that there's a lot more conviction than what is seen, because only a few cases make it to the media. And then unfortunately they get blundered in the media. And then it seems as if the justice system is not working properly.
I mean, really, it's just a pot, a soup full of really unnecessary information in some cases, the fact that the police are overwhelmed, the fact that there are cases that are being people sentenced and that's not getting out. It's just a wild amount of information that some is not going to the right people, some's not coming out, and that's very problematic, because that is definitely not the first, and I can tell you, not the last caller who's going to tell me that on this day's show. Mina, you're on the line. Hi.
Thank you, Pabi. I love your show.
I appreciate
condolences to the Matosi family. I'm a parent. I have a 22-year-old. And
a 22-year-old?
Girl, yes. And I feel the pain of the parent. When my daughter told me she has a boyfriend, here is what I did. I asked her for the boyfriend's number, for the boyfriend's ID, and the number of my boyfriend. She said, I'm crazy. Tell me if I'm crazy. I was thinking of having a meeting with the boyfriend and talking to him, and I desisted. But having heard the story, I will do it. Here's a problem with us: we complain a lot, but we're not concentrating on solutions. What I'm doing, I think it's part of the solution. Don't ask me where I work, but let me tell you a typical criminal in South Africa.
Tell me.
And that is where our solutions lie. 1, the criminal is male. Number 2, the criminal is black, African. Number 3, is aged between 18 and 40. Number 4, is unemployed or unemployable, or does not have matric, does not have a qualification. Number 5, he does not know his father or does not have a good relationship with his father. Now, the problem to crime is the solution to crime is multiple. It's not about just catching them and pushing them into jail. We have to look at those kinds of solutions. Their homes. An absent father is one of the biggest problems in criminality. So we can take them to jail, take them there, make them to be more criminal, and when they come back, they become worse. So therein is our solution. We've got to look at a multi-pronged approach. We should not have fathers who run away from their children. Many of our black men are angry. And we have not looked at those psyches.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think you're wrong at all. And I think that that's the cleanup of society that we're looking for, right? But at this very moment, we're looking at this very case, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you in many ways. It's going to take a long time, though, right, Willem, for us to be able to sweep this out of what South Africa now is known for.
Yeah, indeed, and I tend to agree with you, with the caller. I think he struck a few nerves there. We need a holistic approach towards this, and we need to take ownership. But most of all, we need to become part of the solution. You know, we can discuss the challenges for a long time, and we can discuss how bad the police is, how bad the judiciary is, etc., etc. But what are we going to do to change that around? What strategies are the politicians put in place, the leadership going to place? But you as a community, are you involved as well? And you mentioned in your introduction how people were just standing by.
Yes.
You know, that is a very important point, your community involvement in that. And that doesn't have to be when someone is attacked and there's a knife or a gun involved. You know, you can join your community policing forums. You can be proactively involved in your neighborhood to try to change it around. But if you look at that question, just forgive me to speak on that, because that is very important for us. Whenever you are in a situation like that, this perpetrator come in, he's very violent, and he's got a gun or a knife and he attacks someone. The public is really scared for a few reasons. One of them is that he might turn the knife on you and he might kill you. And then that's what people do. So if I'm there with my children, for instance, you know, my first thing, I will protect my children and take them out of harm's way before you would like to intervene. And that's unfortunately the violent society that we created, as I mentioned, that actually force us to do things like that. Your public doesn't want to become involved, because at the end of the day, now if you're helped and you are being summoned, now you have to go to court, you become a witness or what.
Yeah.
So people tend to stand back, and that is really unfortunate.
Absolutely. Okay, we've come to the end of the time that we can have this discussion, and it's very, very unfortunate. You know, we kind of are quite reactive as the story happens, and then we have this discussion. But I know the two of you are continuously having these discussions, and you're continuously on the ground or in court, you know, analyzing what's happening in South Africa when it comes to gender-based violence and femicide. So thank you very much for taking time out of your day. Legal analyst Nthabiseng Dubazana and crime expert Willem Els, thank you again.
Thank you.